Rewind mentally more than 4 millennia. The planet you walk on today is not the same one that existed then. Physical laws operated differently. The atmosphere contained more oxygen, and your life expectancy wasn't measured in decades but in centuries. Look upward. You wouldn't see the blue, you know. You'd see a kind of vaporous ceiling, a suspended layer of water that transformed sunlight into diffuse luminosity, like living perpetually under an overcast sky but without clouds. Beneath that atmospheric canopy, life thrived in ways impossible today. Flora reached colossal dimensions. Fauna included beasts that made the ground tremble with each step. And in fortified cities, an aristocracy of hybrid beings, half celestial, half terrestrial, ruled with absolute brutality. This analysis will take you through that lost world. You'll see how the invasion of angelic entities corrupted not only human culture, but the genetic code itself of every living creature. You'll understand why the Bible records that God looked at his creation and decided to erase everything and start over. And you'll discover why Jesus warned that those conditions would return just before his return. Leaving your dwelling in that era meant facing an ecosystem designed for creatures much larger than you. Tree ferns formed forests where light barely penetrated. Some trunks were so massive that entire families excavated their interiors to inhabit them. But vegetation wasn't your greatest concern. That came when you felt seismic vibrations. When you finally saw it, a building-sized creature grazing, you understood you shared the planet with dinosaurs. Job 40 describes Behemoth precisely. It feeds on grass like an ox. Its tail sways like a cedar. Its bones are tubes of bronze. This isn't describing a hippopotamus. This is eyewitness testimony of a sauropod. Winged reptiles patrolled the skies. Birds of prey the size of small aircraft occasionally descended to capture prey, including unwary human children. The divine command was clear: exercise dominion over the animals. But when a creature weighs 20 tons, dominion required intelligence, strategy, and above all, walking in obedience to the Creator. Genesis 2:5-6 reveals something crucial. The Lord God had not sent rain on the earth, but streams came up from the earth and watered the whole surface of the ground. It didn't rain. Genesis 1:6-7 describes, God made the vault and separated the water under the vault from the water above it. Water was suspended above, creating a perfect planetary greenhouse. This system blocked cosmic radiation. Your DNA didn't get damaged. That's why Genesis 5 records lifespans of 900+ years without hesitation. Adam lived 9 to 30 years. Methuselah reached 969. Death entered through sin at Romans 5:12, but God allowed it to be slow. It also increased atmospheric pressure. More dissolved oxygen explained why massive creatures could breathe efficiently. And it created stable global climate without storms or droughts. Daily survival was constant negotiation with a hostile environment. But soon you'd discover that dinosaurs weren't your real problem. Your real problem would arrive when you looked at the night sky and saw lights moving with purpose, descending. They weren't meteors. They were conscious entities abandoning the celestial dimension and entering the terrestrial one. The Book of Enoch, quoted in Jude, identifies them: the Watchers, 200 angels under Samyaza's leadership who made a pact on Mount Hermon. If they were going to rebel, they'd do it collectively. It was all or nothing. Their appearance was impossible to ignore. They measured between 2.5 and 3 meters. Their skin emitted phosphorescence. Their eyes possessed their own luminosity. But most disturbing was their knowledge. They spoke every dialect. They knew family secrets never revealed. They anticipated thoughts. They arrived bearing gifts. But these gifts were Trojan horses. Azazel specialized in military metallurgy. Before his arrival, conflicts were resolved with agricultural tools. Afterwards, swords forged to pierce torsos existed. Mortality in conflicts multiplied exponentially. But Azazel also taught cosmetology. How to line eyes with antimony, how to create jewelry. He transformed natural beauty into artificial competition. Vanity became institutionalized. Shamyaza contributed pharmacological knowledge, which roots altered consciousness, which plants created dependency. The birth of sorcery and drugs. Barakel taught astrology, not scientific astronomy, but the belief that planets determine your destiny, transferring worship from creator to creation. Genesis 4 shows natural cultural progress. Jabal develops herding. Jubal invents instruments. Tubal-Cain discovers metallurgy. Gradual generational development. The Watchers collapse that timeline. They delivered 1,000 years of advances in a decade, and humanity lacked the moral maturity for that power. Proverbs 4:7. Wisdom is supreme. But the Watchers inverted the sequence. Power before wisdom. Capability before character. The result, a technologically advanced but spiritually bankrupt society. And then they took the final step that would seal the Antediluvian World's fate. They saw human women and desired them. Genesis 6:2. The sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they took any of them they chose as wives. The verb lakash implies forced appropriation, not romantic courtship. Job 1.6 clarifies who the sons of God are. One day the angels came to present themselves before the Lord. These are angelic beings. Job 38:7 describes creation. All the sons of God shouted for joy before humans existed. Jude 6:7 confirms, and the angels who did not keep their positions of authority, these he has kept in darkness, like Sodom and Gomorrah, gave themselves up to sexual immorality and perversion. The phrase sarkos heteros, different flesh, connects the angelic sin with Sodom. Both transgressed sexual barriers established by God. Matthew 22:30. At the resurrection, people will neither marry. They will be like the angels. Angels don't reproduce. But these abandoned their dimension, materialized, and sought sexual union with human women. When they crossed that line, they violated something fundamental in the cosmos's architecture. And from that unnatural mixture, the Nephilim were born. The pregnancy was a medical nightmare. Babies measuring 1 meter at birth. Abnormally rapid development, violent fetal movements. Many mothers died in childbirth. Their chronology defied biology. 6 months, complete locomotion. 2 years, adult strength. 5 years, adult human height. 10 years exceeded 3 meters. Maturity, 4 meters or more. Numbers 13-33. We saw the Nephilim there. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes. Deuteronomy 3:11. Og's bed measured 4 meters. 1 Samuel 17:4. Goliath measured 2.9 meters. And Goliath was exceptional centuries after the flood. But their size was secondary. Their psychological configuration was what was terrifying. They possessed superior intelligence, but lacked empathy, moral conscience. They were high-functioning psychopaths. They saw humans as exploitable resources, cattle, never as equals. Why would a 10-year-old Nephilim obey parents he could crush? He didn't. At that age, many had already killed out of curiosity or rage. When they reached maturity, they decided they didn't want to be sons. They wanted to be kings. Genesis 6:4 calls them men of renown, Anshe Hashem, the global celebrities, the heroes everyone wanted to emulate. They built palaces reflecting their scale, walls so thick that 10 men worked weeks to place a single block. They demanded tribute, grains, animals, metals, women. Colossal statues of 10, 15 meters were erected in plazas. Temples where sacrifices, including human ones, occurred daily. The hierarchy was brutal. Nephilim at the apex, collaborating humans in the middle, enslaved humans at the base. The logistical problem, how to feed giants with insatiable appetite. Enoch documents the escalation. First, they consumed all the labor of men. Your annual harvest fed one Nephilim for a week. Communities collapsed. Second, they turned against them and devoured mankind. Birds, beasts, reptiles. They hunted species to extinction. The ecosystem crumbled. Third, and began to devour each other's flesh and drank the blood. Cannibalism among Nephilim. Then, humans on the menu. Leviticus 17:11. For the life of a creature is in the blood. Blood is sacred. Drinking it is profanation. Genesis 9:5-6. Whoever sheds human blood, for in the image of God has God made mankind. Cannibalism wasn't just a crime against humans. It was a crime against God's image. And this occurred publicly. Altars in plazas where victims were executed before crowds forced to watch. Children grew up learning that human life had no value. Later mythologies, titans devouring children, Cronus consuming offspring, weren't allegories. They were echoes of real trauma. Goliath was merely a genetic remnant, a shadow of what the Nephilim were at their peak. Terror was the constant atmosphere. While Cain's metropolises shone all night, another group lived radically differently in mountainous regions. Genesis 4:17. Cain built a city. The first murderer established the first urban settlement. He named it after his son, not after God. It was a declaration of autonomy. This lineage produced impressive culture. Jabal innovated herding. Jubal created instruments. Tubal-Cain mastered metallurgy. Everything humanly brilliant, everything spiritually sterile. Romans 1:21-22. Although they knew God, they became futile in their thinking. When the Watchers arrived, this civilization adopted their technology without ethical questioning. Cities grew, forges roared, music never ceased, luxury was obscene. Nephilim ruled as living gods. Genesis 4:26 contrasts. At that time, people began to call on the name of the Lord. They didn't build skyscrapers. They invoked the Creator. They lived in portable tents, at elevations away from urban centers. They rejected materialism. They worshipped Yahweh in purity. Genesis 5 traces this godly line to Noah. This was the line of the messianic promise from Genesis 3:15. That's why Satan had special interest in contaminating it. If he could corrupt it genetically, the promised Messiah couldn't be born. For generations, separation held. But Seth's descendants looked toward the cities. They saw the lights, heard the music, contemplated women adorned with Azazel's cosmetics, and rationalized. Why do we live in tents when they inhabit palaces? Genesis 6:1-2. The sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they took any of them. 2 Corinthians 6:14. Do not be yoked together with unbelievers. First came visits, just to trade, then extended stays, then marriages. We can be light in the darkness. 1 Corinthians 15:33. Bad company corrupts good character. They didn't convert Cain's descendants. Cain's descendants converted them. When the last godly family abandoned the mountains, the last barrier fell. Genesis 6:5. The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time.
holds the light.
Break down each term.
What is it?
Great wickedness, not occasional, proliferating. Every inclination, without exception. All the time, 24/7 to 365. Only evil, unmixed with good. There were no good days. The collective consciousness was tuned to malignant frequency. It was a functionally psychopathic society. Genesis 6:12. All the people on earth had corrupted their ways. In Hebrew, kol basar shachat derek, all flesh, destroying original function, way, nature. Genesis 1 repeatedly establishes, each being reproduces according to its kind. It appears 10 times. It was security, code in DNA. Leviticus 19:19, do not mate different kinds of animals. The Nephilim, with angelic knowledge about biology, systematically violated this law. Book of Jasher 4:18. They mixed the animals and beasts of different species to provoke the Lord. Book of Jubilees 5.2. They began to defile one another and caused great corruption. It wasn't just that humans sinned. Planetary biology was being hacked. Consider mythology. Centaurs, minotaurs, satyrs, sphinxes, griffins, mermaids. Archaeologists find them carved in civilizations with no contact. Portraits of abominations that really existed. Cultures separated by oceans don't independently invent the same impossible creatures, unless they all descend from survivors who saw them. These chimeras were genetically unstable. They existed in constant agony. Their metabolic systems failed. The ecosystem collapsed. Romans 8:22. The whole creation has been groaning as in the pains of childbirth. This transforms our understanding of the flood. It wasn't just moral judgment. It was surgical cleansing of genetic contamination that reached all flesh. The code of life was so altered that the only way to preserve the original species was to execute a planetary reset. It wasn't capricious revenge. It was cosmic chemotherapy. And crucially, if the human line was contaminated, there would be no pure seed from whom the Messiah could be born. Genesis 6:14. Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time. Tamim, blameless, means complete, without defect, unmixed. The same term for sacrifice animals. Genetically pure. Noah was genetically pure. Without Nephilim contamination, a 100% human when that was extremely rare. That's why God selected him. His DNA was intact. From him, the original humanity could be preserved. Hebrews 11:7. By faith, Noah built an ark. His obedience rescued more than 8 people. It rescued the human genome. It rescued the possibility of redemption. Genesis 6:3. My spirit will not contend with humans forever. Their days will be 120 years. 120 years of extended grace. 2 Peter 3:9. The Lord is patient, not wanting anyone to perish. Genesis 6:6. The Lord regretted that he had made human beings, and his heart was deeply troubled. The verb nakam means to deeply lament. God suffered. Ezekiel 33:11. I take no pleasure in the death of the wicked, but rather that they turn from their ways and live. The flood wasn't born from rage. It was born from sadness. Genesis 6:13-14. So God said to Noah, I am going to put an end to all people. Make yourself an ark. For 120 years Noah built, 137 meters long, 23 wide, 14 high, on dry land where it had never rained. 2 Peter 2:5, preacher of righteousness. He proclaimed, he warned. Every hammer blow was a sermon. Hebrews 11:7, by his faith he condemned the world. His obedience testified that judgment was approaching. Imagine the mockery, water from the sky, impossible, it's never rained. But Noah didn't stop. Genesis 7:4. 7 days from now I will send rain. One final week, no one entered. Matthew 24:38-39. They were eating and drinking until the day Noah entered the ark, and they knew nothing about what would happen. It wasn't ignorance, it was intentional unbelief. Genesis 7:16. Then the Lord shut him in. God himself sealed the ark. Revelation 3:7. What he shuts, no one can open. Millions remained outside, and the sky began to change. For the first time, people felt cold, temperature dropping. Unknown meteorological phenomena. The vapor canopy was destabilizing. Dark clouds accumulated. Thunder rumbled. New sound, terrifying. And the first drop fell. Genesis 7:11. On that day all the springs of the great deep burst forth, and the floodgates of the heavens were opened. Dual attack. Underground reservoirs exploded. The crust fractured. Geysers of boiling water erupted. Simultaneously, the canopy collapsed. All the suspended water fell. Waterfalls from the sky. Water rose meters per minute. Rivers overflowed. Valley cities disappeared in the first hour. Walls trapped water inside. Cities became filling tanks. The Nephilim tried to swim, but no one can swim 40 days of deluge while water explodes from below. They sank. The Watchers couldn't rescue their offspring. They watched helplessly. Then they were chained, Jude 6 and 2 Peter 2:4. Genesis 7:19-23. All the high mountains were covered. Every living thing was wiped out. Only Noah was left. 1 Peter 3:20-21. We're saved through water. Baptism now saves you. The water that destroyed also saved. Type of baptism: death to old life, resurrection to new. 2 Peter 3:5-7. The world of that time was deluged and destroyed. By the same word, the present heavens and earth are reserved for fire. If God judged the first world with water, he will judge this one with fire. Genesis 8:15-17. Come out of the ark and be fruitful and increase in number. Renewed mandate, new creation. Genesis 9:6. Whoever sheds human blood, for in the image of God has God made mankind. The image remains. Life retains sanctity. Jesus was explicit. Matthew 24:37-39. As it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. They knew nothing about what would happen until the flood came. What characterized that era? Union of separated dimensions. Angels with humans. Genesis 6:9. Noah walked faithfully with God. Philippians 2:15. That you may become blameless in a warped and crooked generation. The question: which side of the door will you be on when God closes it? Hebrews 11:7. By faith Noah, in holy fear, built an ark. Not panic, reverent fear, radical obedience. The ark today is Christ. John 10:9. I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. One door, and God will close it. Are you inside or outside?